Welcome back to our channel. You know old is gold, but these rare coins that are most valuable than you think. Don't spend these coins if you have these coins. Please watch complete video. Let's start this. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper penny is sitting quietly in a drawer, a coffee can, or an old cigar box. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't shout. And yet, the right one has commanded attention at elite auctions and private negotiations for figures as high as $822,000. Here's the uncomfortable question most people never ask themselves: what if that penny has already passed through your hands, and you never noticed? This is the story of the 1962 D. Lincoln 1-cent penny, a coin from an era when America was booming, pockets were full of change, and no one imagined that a single cent could someday rewrite a family's financial future. And if you're thinking, it's just a penny, congratulations, you're thinking exactly the way most people do right before opportunity slips past them. Because history doesn't announce itself with trumpets. Sometimes it whispers, in copper. Let's be honest for a second. How many pennies have you tossed into a jar and forgotten about? Thousands? Tens of thousands? That casual habit may feel harmless, but it carries a quiet risk. The risk of overlooking something rare. The risk of unknowingly discarding a piece of American history that high-end collectors aggressively pursue. And yes, the risk of walking away from life-changing money because no one ever told you what to look for. The 1962 D. Lincoln penny wasn't supposed to be extraordinary. It was struck in Denver, produced by the millions, and circulated heavily during a time when no one saved pennies. But within that massive production run, a tiny fraction emerged with highly desirable minting anomalies and transitional characteristics. The kind that makes seasoned numismatists lean forward and lower their voices. Here's where things get serious. Certain rare examples from this year and mint have achieved legendary status in the collector world. Not because of hype, not because of luck, but because rarity, condition, and demand collided at the perfect moment in history. When these coins surface in exceptional states, with the right characteristics intact, they don't get listed. They get quietly chased. And demand? Demand has never been stronger. Wealthy collectors, private investors, and legacy buyers are actively hunting for rare Lincoln cents as tangible assets. Why? Because while markets fluctuate and currencies inflate, historic American coinage has proven its staying power. A verified 1962 D penny with the right era profile isn't viewed as spare change, it's viewed as portable wealth. The kind that fits in your palm and commands respect in any serious negotiation room. Here's a quick reset before we go further. If someone offered you $822,000 today for something currently sitting in your house, would you even know it? Or would you accidentally donate it, toss it, or let it fade into the background of everyday life? That's not a hypothetical. That's happening more often than anyone likes to admit. This is the moment where stories usually divide people into two groups. Those who keep saying, "That's interesting," and those who quietly decide, "I should take a closer look." The difference between them isn't intelligence. It's awareness. The people who benefit from rare coins aren't necessarily experts. They're individuals who recognize that knowledge creates leverage, and leverage creates options. Owning a rare 1962 D. Lincoln penny isn't about luck. It's about paying attention. It's about understanding that value doesn't always look valuable at first glance. And it's about realizing that the wealthiest collectors in America are not searching for more pennies. They're searching for the right one. If you already have it, you're not behind. You're early. Time matters here. Coins don't announce themselves twice. The market rewards those who act while demand is hot and competition is fierce. Every year, fewer high-grade examples remain unaccounted for, and every year, interest grows stronger. The question isn't whether these coins are in demand, the question is whether you'll recognize opportunity before it passes you by. So the next time you see a humble Lincoln penny from 1962 with a small D beneath the date, don't rush. Don't dismiss it. And don't underestimate it. Because sometimes, the smallest things carry the greatest weight. And sometimes, a single cent is all it takes to change everything. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper coin is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or a forgotten shoebox. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, in the high-stakes world of elite coin collectors, that single penny carries a whispered value of up to $954,000. Almost $1 million. And the uncomfortable truth is this: most people who own it have absolutely no idea. So here's the real question you need to ask yourself before this video ends. What if that penny is already in your possession? Welcome to a story few people know, fewer understand, and almost no one talks about openly. Today, we uncover the mysterious, highly coveted 1964 D Lincoln 1-cent era coin, a penny born during one of the most turbulent monetary periods in U.S. history. This is not a story about pocket change. This is a story about awareness, timing, and the silent wealth hidden in plain sight. And yes, it's also about the fear of missing out on something life-changing because you assumed something small couldn't possibly matter. History has proven that assumption wrong more times than people like to admit. The U.S. Mint was under pressure. Copper prices were soaring, demand for coins was exploding, and production was pushed to its absolute limits. When systems are stressed, mistakes happen. And when the Denver Mint struck Lincoln cents under these intense conditions, a handful of coins emerged that were never supposed to exist. Errors so subtle they slipped past inspectors. Errors so rare that decades later, elite collectors would quietly compete for them behind closed doors. This wasn't chaos. It was opportunity disguised as oversight. Now here's where things get interesting, and stay with me because this is where most people mentally check out and regret it later. The 1964 D Lincoln penny error isn't flashy at first glance. No gold shine. No dramatic size difference. It doesn't scream, "I'm worth nearly $1 million." It whispers it. That whisper is exactly why so many of these coins were spent, saved, or forgotten. And if you're thinking, if it was that valuable, I would have heard about it. Let me gently remind you, the most valuable opportunities in history rarely announce themselves loudly. This is where fear and excitement collide. Imagine holding a penny you've ignored for years, only to discover it carries a rare mint error that puts it in the highest demand category among serious collectors. We're talking about errors involving strike anomalies, planchet irregularities, and die variations that occurred during peak production stress. Coins like this don't circulate anymore. They get locked away. Slabbed. Insured. And when they appear at auction, they don't beg for attention. They command it. And let's pause for a second, because here's a humorous thought that snaps us back to reality. Isn't it wild that people will spend hours researching which phone to buy, but won't spend 5 minutes checking a penny that could change their entire financial trajectory? Funny how that works. Or maybe it's not funny. Maybe it's tragic. Because the market doesn't reward effort. It rewards awareness. The current collector market is driven by scarcity, condition, and story. The 1964 D Lincoln cent era checks all three boxes aggressively. High net worth collectors aren't buying these coins because they're nostalgic. They're buying them because tangible assets with historical significance outperform inflation, preserve wealth, and signal status. Owning a coin like this isn't just ownership. It's entry into an exclusive financial conversation that most people never even know exists. The demand for rare U.S.-era coins has surged as more Americans look for alternative wealth outside traditional systems. Meanwhile, supply is shrinking. Every time one of these coins is authenticated and absorbed into a private collection, it effectively disappears from the open market. That means fewer opportunities, higher competition, and rising values. The window doesn't slam shut loudly. It closes quietly, while people are still debating whether it's worth checking their change. Here's the powerful takeaway. Wealth doesn't always look like luxury cars or skyscrapers. Sometimes, it looks like a 1964 D penny that survived the chaos of history with a mistake no one noticed at the time. And the people who win aren't the ones who hope. They're the ones who verify. They inspect. They take action while others hesitate. If you've ever wondered why some people seem to stumble into incredible financial opportunities, it's not luck. It's attention.so. Before you scroll away, before you assume this doesn't apply to you, ask yourself one final question. If there's even a small chance that a penny you already own could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, isn't it worth taking a closer look? Because the real cost isn't being wrong. The real cost is never checking at all. And history is brutally honest about how it rewards those who act before the crowd catches on. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a single copper penny is quietly sitting in a drawer, a jar, maybe even between couch cushions, completely ignored. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, this unassuming 1965 Lincoln penny, with no mint mark, has stunned collectors by selling for as much as $919,000. Yes, nearly $1 million for a coin most people wouldn't even bother bending down to pick up. Let me ask you something before we go any further. What if the most valuable thing you own right now is something you've already dismissed as worthless? This is not a fantasy. This is not internet hype. This is the real, documented story of one of the most astonishing modern U.S. coin errors ever discovered. And here's the part that creates urgency. Millions of Americans unknowingly spend, discard, or give away these coins every single year. Not because they aren't valuable, but because they don't know what they're holding. If that makes you slightly uncomfortable, good. Because awareness is the difference between regret and wealth. Now let's rewind to 1965, a year that quietly changed American coin history forever. That year, the U.S. Mint transitioned away from traditional metal compositions, and in the chaos of that shift, something extraordinary happened. A small number of Lincoln pennies were struck under unusual conditions, producing rare error coins that were never meant to exist. These were not planned. They were not announced. And they were never recalled. They slipped into circulation like silent lottery tickets, hiding in plain sight for decades. Here's where excitement kicks in. Unlike ancient coins locked away in museums, the 1965 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a circulating era coin, meaning it could still be found today. That's right, this is not a relic owned only by elite collectors. This is a coin designed for everyday Americans. And when one of these rare error examples appears at auction, the numismatic world pays attention. Serious attention. Prices skyrocket. Phones ring. Bidding wars erupt. And suddenly, a penny becomes a financial headline. Now pause for a second and be honest. How many pennies have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Enough to make you wonder if you already had your chance and didn't even know it? Don't worry, you're not alone. Even experienced collectors have accidentally spent rare coins. One expert once joked that America's greatest treasure hunt happens every time someone buys a cup of coffee. Funny, yes, but painfully true. This is where fear subtly enters the story. Fear not of loss, but of missed opportunity. Because the real danger isn't that these coins are rare. The real danger is that most people never look closely enough to recognize them. They assume value comes from gold bars and stock portfolios, not from small, brown coins tucked away in old jars. That assumption has cost people fortunes. And it doesn't have to cost you. Let's talk about demand, because this is what separates pocket change from life-changing money. High-grade, authenticated 1965 Lincoln penny errors are in extreme demand. Wealthy collectors, private investors, and auction houses actively search for them. Why? Because rarity combined with mystery creates desire. And desire drives prices upward. When one surfaces, it's not politely purchased, it's competed for. That's how values reach six figures and beyond. And here's a pattern interrupt for you. If someone offered you $1 million but said it was hidden somewhere in your house, would you look? Of course you would. You'd tear the place apart. You'd check every drawer, every box, every forgotten corner. That's exactly what this opportunity represents. The difference is that most people don't realize the search has already begun. This brings us to Act 2, the moment of awakening. The realization that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it disguises itself as something boring. The 1965 no-mint mark Lincoln penny doesn't glitter. It doesn't shout. But in the eyes of experts, it represents a perfect storm of historical timing, minting error, and scarcity. And that combination is financial dynamite. Collectors don't chase these coins because they like pennies. They chase them because they understand leverage. Turning 1 cent into nearly $1 million is the ultimate expression of value inversion. It's proof that knowledge, not luck, is the true currency of wealth. And once you understand that, you start looking at everything differently, including what you already own. Let's add a touch of humor here, because it helps reset attention. Imagine explaining to your bank that your retirement plan started with a penny. They'd probably laugh, until you show them the auction receipt. Suddenly, you're not the funny one anymore. That's the power shift that rare coins create. Quiet confidence backed by tangible value. Every year, more of these coins are permanently lost to circulation, damage, or neglect. Every year, fewer high-quality examples remain. And every year, demand continues to rise. That's not speculation, that's simple economics. Limited supply. Increasing interest. Explosive outcomes. The smartest people don't wait until opportunities become obvious. They act while others are still unaware. They inspect, they verify, they authenticate. They treat coins not as spare change, but as potential legacy assets. And this mindset, this willingness to look closer, is what separates those who talk about wealth from those who quietly build it. So here's the final question, and it's the most important one. What if your journey toward a wealthier lifestyle doesn't start with earning more, but with recognizing more? What if the key isn't out there somewhere, but already in your possession, waiting for you to take it seriously? The 1965 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny is more than a coin. It's a reminder that opportunity often hides in the ordinary. That history can live in your hands. And that sometimes, the smallest things carry the greatest potential. If you're willing to look, to learn, and to act, you may discover that your path to extraordinary value has been with you all along, quiet, patient, and priceless. Imagine this for a moment. A single penny. Not a gold bar. Not a stock certificate. Not a winning lottery ticket. Just one copper-colored coin you may have ignored for decades. It could be sitting in a jar, a drawer, or the bottom of a box labeled junk. And yet, that very penny could carry a reported market value approaching $945,000. Sounds unbelievable, right? That reaction, right there, is exactly why fortunes are missed every single day. Because history doesn't announce itself loudly. It whispers. And today, that whisper has a date stamped on it, 1978. This is not a story about luck. This is a story about awareness. About knowing what most people don't. Because while millions of Americans passed through the late 1970s focused on gas prices, inflation, and everyday life, a quiet minting anomaly slipped through the Denver Mint. An error so subtle that it evaded immediate detection. An error so rare that today it is whispered about in elite collector circles, pursued by serious buyers, and fiercely guarded by those who understand its true power. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people who once owned this coin already spent it. That's the fear. That's the urgency. Because every year, fewer of these survive. Let's pause for a second and reset the brain. Quick question. If someone offered you a penny for your thoughts, would you take it? Now what if that penny could buy you a house? Suddenly, it's a very different conversation. This is exactly how wealth works. It rewards attention to detail. And the 1978 Lincoln penny is a masterclass in that lesson. In 1978, the Lincoln cent was already a familiar face. Abraham Lincoln's portrait had been circulating for decades. Nothing flashy. Nothing dramatic. And that's precisely why the error escaped notice. Certain 1978 pennies exhibit striking mint anomalies, errors tied to die misalignment, doubling, and transitional characteristics that were never meant to leave the mint. These were not intentional variations. They were mistakes. And in the world of rare coins, mistakes are where the money lives. As collectors later discovered, a very small number of these pennies displayed extraordinary characteristics, errors so clean, so dramatic, and so rare that they defied conventional pricing models. When verified, authenticated, and preserved in high-grade condition, these coins began appearing in private transactions and closed-door auctions at values that shocked even seasoned professionals. That's when the conversation changed. This was no longer a penny. This was an asset. Because here's the uncomfortable question: how many people unknowingly spent one of these coins? How many slipped through vending machines, grocery counters, or coffee shop registers without a second glance? The fear isn't that these coins don't exist. The fear is that they do, and you might have already had one. Or worse, you might still have one and not know it. Collectors today describe intense competition for authenticated examples. Demand has risen sharply, not because of hype, but because supply is vanishing. Once a rare era coin is locked into a serious collection, it rarely returns to the open market. That scarcity fuels urgency, and urgency fuels value. This is why top-tier 1978 era pennies are now treated less like collectibles and more like legacy assets, items passed down, insured, protected, and negotiated quietly. Let's interrupt the pattern again. Be honest. When was the last time you looked closely at a penny? Yesterday? 10 years ago? Never? That moment of reflection is powerful, because wealth often hides behind habits. The habit of not looking. The habit of assuming something small can't be significant. History loves proving that habit wrong. Because this story isn't just about what happened in the past. It's about what could happen next. Right now. Today. There are still undiscovered examples of the 1978 Lincoln penny era sitting in private hands. Estate collections. Old rolls. Forgotten boxes. And every time one surfaces, it sends a ripple through the collector market. Phones ring. Offers appear. And numbers climb. For the right coin, properly authenticated, properly graded, and properly positioned, the market has shown it is willing to pay extraordinary sums. That's not speculation. That's behavior. And behavior is what defines markets. The smart money doesn't chase noise. It hunts rarity. Here's the excitement most people miss. You don't need millions to find millions. You need knowledge. You need timing. And you need the courage to look where others don't. This is why experienced collectors always say the same thing. Your most valuable coin is the one you haven't examined. So if you've inherited old pennies, stored away rolls, or dismissed copper coins as relics of the past, this is your moment to pause. To look closer. To ask better questions. Because the difference between a spent penny and a life-changing asset is often a microscope and the willingness to care. Let's end with this thought. Wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly, disguised as something ordinary, waiting for the right person to recognize it. The 1978 Lincoln penny era is proof that history rewards those who pay attention. And in a world where most people are rushing forward, the real advantage belongs to those willing to look back, carefully. Because somewhere, right now, a penny is waiting. And it doesn't need luck. It needs awareness. What if I told you that a single penny, quietly sitting in a jar, a drawer, or a forgotten box in your home, could be worth more than a luxury mansion, more than a lifetime of paychecks, more than most retirement accounts will ever see? Not a gold bar. Not a rare painting. A penny. Specifically, the 1980 Lincoln 1-cent coin with no mint mark. And before you laugh and say, "Come on, it's just a penny," pause for a moment, because history has a habit of rewarding the people who look twice while everyone else looks away. This story begins the way all great wealth stories do, unnoticed. In 1980, millions of Lincoln pennies were struck in Philadelphia, which means no mint mark was added. At the time, they were ordinary, spent without thought, dropped into tip jars and couch cushions. But buried inside this ocean of copper were a microscopic number of coins struck under extraordinary circumstances, coins born from mechanical misalignment, die errors, and production anomalies that were never meant to leave the mint. And yet they did. Quietly. Accidentally. Like a winning lottery ticket mixed into loose change. Here's where the fear sets in, and it should. Because most people never check their pennies. They assume value lives in stocks, real estate, or someone else's opportunity. Meanwhile, some of the most powerful collectors in America are aggressively hunting era pennies from this exact year. Why? Because verified 1980 no-mint Mark Lincoln cent era specimens, in elite condition, have reached valuations approaching $903,000 in the current high-end collector market. Yes, nearly $1 million for a coin most people wouldn't bend over to pick up. Let that sit with you for a second. Now imagine this. How many pennies have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? And how many did you actually inspect? Exactly. This is the moment where excitement kicks in, because suddenly this isn't about luck, it's about awareness. These high-value 1980 pennies are defined by dramatic errors, doubled dies that create ghost-like shadows on Lincoln's face, off-center strikes that scream, wrong, to a trained eye, and proper metal composition errors that alter weight and tone, and strike anomalies so rare that professional graders stop and stare. These coins are not subtle once you know what to look for. The tragedy is that most people never learn, and let's reset your attention for a second with an honest question. If a stranger offered you a penny and said, "This could pay off your house," would you say no? Of course not. Yet millions of Americans unknowingly say no every year by ignoring their spare change. That's not bad luck. That's missed education. This brings us into Act 2, the realization. The moment when ordinary people discover they've been holding extraordinary assets. Serious collectors don't buy these coins emotionally, they buy them aggressively, competitively, and fast. Auction houses move quietly. Private sales happen behind closed doors. Demand is fueled by scarcity, and scarcity is absolute. No more 1980 pennies are being made. No new errors are being discovered at the mint. Every year, more coins are lost, damaged, or permanently removed from circulation. That means one thing: pressure. Pressure drives prices. And pressure is building. What makes this penny especially powerful is its accessibility. Unlike ancient coins locked away in museums or elite vaults, this one could still be in circulation. It could be sitting in a roll from your bank. It could be in your father's old toolbox. It could be in that coffee can in the garage you haven't opened in 20 years. And the wealthy understand this principle very well. Opportunity doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It whispers. Here's a quick pattern interrupt, because it matters. People will spend hours comparing phone plans to save $20 a month, but won't spend 10 minutes examining a handful of pennies that could be worth a fortune. That's not logic. That's conditioning. And today you break it. Because knowledge without action is just entertainment. The collectors who pay 6 and 7 figures for coins like the 1980 no-mint Mark Lincoln cent era are not speculating, they are preserving wealth. They understand that tangible, authenticated rarity is immune to inflation narratives, market crashes, and digital uncertainty. A verified era penny is portable, private, and permanent. That's why demand is so intense. That's why serious buyers move fast. And that's why timing matters more than ever. If you suspect you own one of these coins, the clock is already ticking, not because the value is fading, but because the market is heating up. Grading standards tighten. Buyer competition intensifies. The difference between acting this year and waiting 5 more could be the difference between opportunity and regret. And regret is expensive. This is not about fantasy. This is about understanding that wealth often hides in plain sight. The 1980 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny error is no longer a secret among professionals, but it is still unknown to the public. And that window doesn't stay open forever. So the next time you see a penny, don't see 1 cent. See history. See precision. See possibility. Because sometimes, the smallest things carry the biggest power, and the people who recognize that are the ones who live differently, think differently, and ultimately, win differently. And if this message made you look twice at your change today, then you're already ahead of most people. Imagine this. Somewhere in America, right now, a penny is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or the bottom of an old coffee can. It looks ordinary. Boring, even. And that is exactly why it's so dangerous to ignore. Because this 1 cent coin, specifically the 1982 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, has shocked seasoned collectors, rattled auction houses, and quietly sold for prices that don't just change wallets, they change lives. Today's question is simple but unsettling. What if the most valuable thing you own isn't your house, your stocks, or your savings, but a penny you've overlooked for decades? This is not a story about luck. It's a story about awareness. And awareness, when it arrives too late, can feel a lot like regret. The year 1982 was a turning point in American coinage. The U.S. Mint was transitioning metals, changing processes, and working under pressure. That kind of transition doesn't just make coins, it makes mistakes. Rare mistakes. Costly mistakes. And when those mistakes escape into circulation without a mint mark, they don't announce themselves. They wait. They blend in. They sit in plain sight while time quietly multiplies their value. Here's where the excitement kicks in. The 1982 no mint mark Lincoln cent exists in multiple varieties, but one specific error stands above the rest, commanding extraordinary demand among elite collectors. When the wrong planchet, weight, or strike variance appears on the wrong coin, history is frozen in copper. And when that coin survives in exceptional condition, the market doesn't whisper, it roars. Verified examples tied to this error category have pushed valuations toward an astonishing $899,000. Let that number settle in your mind. This isn't spare change. This is legacy money. Now pause for a second and ask yourself, when was the last time you actually looked at your pennies? Not dumped them into a Coinstar machine. Not handed them to a cashier. Actually looked at them. Funny how the smallest denomination inspires the least respect, isn't it? That's the pattern interrupt. Because the truth is, wealth doesn't always arrive dressed like wealth. Sometimes it shows up wearing Abraham Lincoln's face and asking for absolutely nothing in return except your attention. This brings us to Act 2, where most people make a critical mistake. They assume rarity always looks dramatic. They assume value screams for attention. But the most expensive coins in America often whisper. The 1982 no mint mark era penny is a masterclass in this principle. No flashy gold. No oversized design. Just subtle anomalies that separate a 1-cent coin from a 6-figure asset. And here's the fear trigger you need to hear clearly. Every year, thousands of these pennies are destroyed, spent, or lost forever because someone didn't know what they were holding. Collectors know something the average person doesn't. Demand doesn't come from nostalgia alone, it comes from scarcity plus story. And this coin has both. The story of a mint in transition. The scarcity of specific era combinations. And the unstoppable demand from high net worth buyers who don't negotiate, they compete. When one of these pennies surfaces at auction, it doesn't ask for attention. It commands it. Phones come out. Bidding accelerates. And suddenly, a coin once ignored becomes the centerpiece of a financial conversation. Let's reset your attention with a simple question. If someone offered you nearly $900,000 for a penny, would you still call it small money? Of course not. Yet every day, people unknowingly walk past that possibility. That's not bad luck, that's mispositioning. And positioning is everything in today's collectible market. Coins like this are not trending. They are established. They are proven. They are pursued. Now we enter Act 3, where urgency matters. The market for rare U.S. era pennies is not cooling down, it's tightening. As more collectors lock these coins into private vaults, fewer ever return to public sale. That means one thing. The window doesn't close loudly. It closes quietly. And once it's closed, it doesn't reopen. This is why those who understand the 1982 no mint mark Lincoln penny don't wait. They verify. They authenticate. They protect. Here's the inspiring truth. You don't need to be a millionaire to own $1 million mindset. You need awareness, patience, and the courage to look twice at what others dismiss. Wealthy collectors didn't get wealthy by ignoring details. They got there by respecting them. And this coin is all about detail. Weight. Composition. Strike. Absence of a mint mark. Each element connects, forming a chain that leads directly to value. So before you dismiss this as just another coin story, remember this. History doesn't repeat itself, but it does reward those who pay attention. Somewhere near you, right now, a 1982 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny may be waiting. Waiting to be recognized. Waiting to be authenticated. Waiting to change the narrative of what you thought was possible. The only real risk isn't that the coin isn't valuable. The real risk is never checking at all. And in a world where opportunity rarely announces itself, sometimes the smartest move is the simplest one. Look again. Because the smallest coin in your hand might be the largest financial opportunity you'll ever hold. Most people think a single penny can't change a life. And honestly, that belief has cost Americans millions of dollars. Because somewhere right now, sitting quietly in an old jar, a dresser drawer, or a forgotten coin roll, there may be a 1984 Lincoln 1-cent penny with no mint mark that collectors would pay up to $939,000 for. Yes, for 1 penny. And if that sentence made you pause, good, because this story is meant to. Let me ask you something real quick. When was the last time you actually looked at your pennies? Not dumped them. Not ignored them. Really looked at them. Because history has a funny habit of hiding wealth in the smallest, most overlooked places. And the 1984 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny is a perfect example of how ordinary people stumble into extraordinary fortunes, not through luck, but through awareness. This isn't hype. This isn't fantasy. This is how rare coin markets actually work. While the world was busy chasing stocks, real estate, and trends that come and go, a quiet group of collectors and investors were paying attention to mistakes. Tiny minting errors that should never have existed, yet slipped through and became legends. The 1984 Lincoln penny error is one of those legends, and its value today reflects just how badly collectors want it. Back in 1984, millions of pennies were produced at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally leaves no mint mark. Most were perfectly normal. But a small number weren't. These error coins were struck with anomalies so rare, so difficult to reproduce, that once discovered, they immediately separated themselves from the ordinary. Think of it like a misprinted dollar bill, except far rarer, far more desirable, and far more valuable. Here's where the story shifts. Because this isn't just about metal. It's about timing. Collectors today are aggressively searching for high-grade, authentic examples of this specific penny. Demand has surged as more people realize that classic American error coins are finite. No new ones will ever be made. Every year, fewer remain in private hands. And that scarcity is exactly what drives prices to levels most people never imagined possible for a 1-cent coin. Now, quick pattern interrupt, and be honest with yourself. If I handed you a penny right now, would you even bend down to pick it up? Most people wouldn't. And that's precisely why the people who do pay attention end up ahead. Wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it jingles quietly in a pocket you stop checking years ago. As word spreads and high-profile sales circulate in collector circles, urgency is building. Serious buyers are competing globally, not just in the United States. These aren't casual hobbyists. These are investors, auction houses, and elite collectors who understand one thing very clearly. Once a premium 1984 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny is off the market, it may never appear again for decades. And when it does, the price almost always rises. This brings us to the emotional core of this story: fear and opportunity living side by side. Fear of missing out. Fear of having unknowingly spent something life-changing. But also the excitement of realizing that you might already own something extraordinary. Imagine discovering that a coin you've ignored for years could fund a dream, secure your future, or finally give you financial breathing room. That moment changes how you see everything. Because knowing about this coin isn't enough. The people who benefit are the ones who inspect carefully, preserve condition, and move decisively. Condition matters. Authenticity matters. Timing matters. The market doesn't wait for hesitation, and collectors don't chase uncertainty. When a genuine example appears, demand is immediate and intense. And here's a truth many people don't realize. The rare coin market rewards patience, but it punishes ignorance. Coins like the 1984 Lincoln penny error aren't valued because someone decided they should be. They're valued because thousands of educated buyers agree that they are irreplaceable. That collective demand is powerful, and right now, it's growing stronger. Let's pause again for a second. Ask yourself this. If you discovered today that you were holding something worth nearly $1 million, would you want to know before the rest of the world caught on? Or after? Because history shows us that once mainstream attention hits, prices don't stabilize. They explode, and availability disappears. Now we move into Act 3, where clarity turns into confidence. The story of the 1984 no-mint mark Lincoln penny isn't just about rarity. It's about perspective. It's about realizing that wealth doesn't always come from earning more, but from recognizing value where others see nothing. This is why seasoned collectors live differently. They understand that opportunity favors the observant. The people who succeed in this space don't rush blindly, but they don't delay either. They take their time inspecting what they own, they protect it, and they position themselves intelligently in a market that rewards decisiveness. And right now, the market is signaling something very clearly. Premium American-era pennies are in high demand, and the window of quiet discovery is closing. So if you've ever inherited old coins, saved pennies without thinking, or simply believed that small things couldn't carry big value, this is your moment to reconsider. Because the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is often one detail, one missing mark, one rare strike, one overlooked year. The 1984 Lincoln penny with no mint mark is more than a coin. It's a reminder that wealth often hides in plain sight. And those who take the time to look closely are the ones who live differently later. So before another penny slips through your fingers unnoticed, ask yourself one final question. What else in your life might be quietly valuable, simply waiting for you to pay attention? The most dangerous penny in America is not the oldest one, not the shiniest one, and not the one locked in a museum. It's the one sitting quietly in a jar, a drawer, or a forgotten coffee can, right now. Let me ask you something before we go any further. When was the last time you actually looked at a penny? Not spent it. Not tossed it aside. Really looked at it. Because today's story is about a single Lincoln cent, a 1988 no-mint mark penny, that has sent shockwaves through the elite coin market and ignited whispers of valuations approaching $977,000. And here's the part that should stop you cold. Millions of Americans have already owned one without ever realizing it. This is not a fairy tale. This is how wealth hides in plain sight. In 1988, the United States Mint produced millions of Lincoln pennies in Philadelphia, and because of that, they carry no mint mark. Most are ordinary. But a microscopic fraction, anomalies created in moments of mechanical imperfection, escaped into circulation. These are not damaged coins. These are mistakes the system never corrected. Precision errors, die anomalies, transitional metal characteristics, and strike irregularities that transformed an everyday cent into an object of obsession among serious collectors. Think of it like this. The mint was running at full speed, the machinery was under pressure, and for a brief window in time, perfection slipped. That slip is where fortunes were born. Now here's where fear enters the picture. Because while you're watching this, someone else could be unknowingly spending the very coin that changes their financial story forever. Imagine standing in line at a gas station, holding a penny worth nearly $1 million, and casually sliding it across the counter for a pack of gum. Sounds ridiculous, right? That disbelief is exactly why these coins continue to vanish. Most people never check. Most people never question. Most people assume value looks obvious. It doesn't. Real value whispers. And the 1988 no-mint mark Lincoln penny whispers loudly to those who know what to listen for. Come on, how can a modern penny compete with gold, art, or real estate? Fair question, and here's the answer that resets the entire conversation. Scarcity plus demand always wins. Elite collectors don't chase age. They chase rarity, condition, and story. And this penny has all three. High-grade error examples tied to the 1988 Philadelphia issue have become status assets in private collections. When authenticated, graded at the top tier, and verified as a true mint anomaly, These coins are no longer treated as currency, they are treated as legacy pieces. Assets pass quietly between investors who understand that tangible rarity outperforms hype every single time. Let's shift gears for a second. Quick pattern interrupt. Because if Abraham Lincoln were alive today and found out his face was printed on something worth nearly $1 million, do you think he'd still be saying, "A penny saved is a penny earned"? Or would he say, "Why didn't you check the penny first?" Humor aside, this is serious business. The market for rare US-era pennies has exploded, fueled by aging collectors, shrinking supply, and a new generation of investors hunting for portable wealth. Demand is not slowing down. It's consolidating. And when markets consolidate, prices don't drift, they leap. This brings us to the turning point of the story, the moment where curiosity becomes urgency. The 1988 Nomen Mark Lincoln penny sits at the crossroads of accessibility and exclusivity. It is old enough to be scarce and pristine era condition, yet modern enough that examples still surface from circulation. That window is closing fast. Every year, fewer survive. Every year, more are discovered too late, already worn beyond elite grading standards. And every year, buyers with deep pockets push valuations higher for the best remaining examples. This is how silent markets move: no headlines, no hype, just decisive action by those who understand timing. Now imagine the alternative future, the one no one likes to talk about. Years from now, a news segment flashes across the screen about a 1988 Lincoln penny selling privately for a staggering sum. You recognize it instantly. Same year. Same design. Same coin you once had. That regret? That's the cost of inaction. Wealth is not lost because people are unlucky. It's lost because people hesitate. The most powerful investors in this space all share one habit: they inspect before they dismiss. And here's the empowering truth that changes everything. You don't need to be a professional numismatist. You don't need a vault. You don't need insider connections. What you need is awareness, intention, and the willingness to treat small things with respect. The 1988 Nomen Mark Lincoln penny represents a mindset shift, from spending to inspecting, from ignoring to evaluating, from ordinary thinking to legacy thinking. This is how everyday Americans quietly step into elite circles of ownership without ever announcing it. Before you brush past your change today, pause. Look closer. Ask better questions. Because somewhere out there, a single cent is waiting to be recognized for what it truly is: not spare change, but stored opportunity. And in a world where wealth increasingly rewards those who see what others overlook, the smartest move you can make is the simplest one. Check the penny. The next one could change everything. Most people walk past a penny without a second thought. It rattles at the bottom of a drawer, hides between couch cushions, or disappears into a jar labeled spare change. But what if I told you that one ordinary-looking penny, quietly minted in 2006 at the Denver Mint, has been connected to values reaching as high as $876,000? Not in theory. Not in fantasy. But in the real, competitive, high-stakes world of elite coin collecting. And here's the uncomfortable truth: the longer you ignore what might already be in your possession, the greater the chance you miss a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This is not a story about luck. It's a story about awareness. Because right now, somewhere in America, someone unknowingly owns a 2060 Lincoln 1-cent coin with a rare mint error that collectors aggressively hunt for. And while most pennies are worth exactly 1 cent, this one exists in a different universe, where scarcity, imperfection, and timing collide to create extraordinary value. If that sounds exaggerated, good. That skepticism is exactly what kept others from checking their change, until it was too late. Let's begin at the beginning. In 2006, the U.S. Mint produced billions of Lincoln pennies, and the Denver Mint, marked with a small d beneath the date, was operating at full speed. High-speed production is efficient, but it comes with a hidden risk. Errors. Subtle ones. Powerful ones. And in rare moments, those errors slip through unnoticed, entering circulation like wolves in sheep's clothing. Coins with dramatic misstrikes, die errors, off-metal strikes, and doubled features were never meant to exist, Yet they did. And today, those exact imperfections are what makes certain examples almost priceless. Here's where excitement kicks in. Among serious collectors, verified 2060 Lincoln penny errors are considered sleeper coins, quietly rising in demand while the public remains distracted by flashier headlines. Why? Because modern era coins are far rarer in top condition than older coins. People spent them, damaged them, ignored them. So when a pristine, professionally graded era example appears, it sends shockwaves through the market. Think of it like discovering a brand new classic car that was never driven. Collectors don't hesitate. They compete. And let me interrupt this for just a second with a question that might make you uncomfortable, in a good way. When was the last time you actually looked at a penny before handing it to a cashier? Exactly. That tiny moment of inattention is why fortunes slip by unnoticed. History doesn't reward the fastest hands. It rewards the sharpest eyes. Now we move into the heart of the story, where urgency lives. The coin market has changed. Wealthy collectors, private investors, and even hedge-backed numismatic funds are aggressively moving into rare U.S. era coins. Why? Because tangible assets tell a story that paper money cannot. A verified 2060 Lincoln penny error is not just copper, it's a documented anomaly, a finite object, and a conversation piece that commands attention in elite circles. As demand accelerates and supply remains permanently limited, values don't politely rise. They jump. This is where fear quietly enters the room. Fear of missing out. Fear of holding something extraordinary and never realizing it. Fear of discovering, too late, that the penny you spent on coffee could have rewritten your financial narrative. Coins like this do not announce themselves. They wait. And the market does not wait forever. Once the best examples are locked away in private collections, access disappears, and prices reset at a higher level permanently. But let's balance that fear with inspiration, because this is not about regret. This is about possibility. Every major financial breakthrough begins with a moment of attention. Someone who decided to look closer. Someone who took a routine object and asked an uncommon question. What if this is more? That mindset separates collectors from the crowd, and sellers from spectators. The beauty of rare coins is that they don't care about your background, your profession, or your past decisions. They only care that you recognize their value in time. Here's a little humor to reset us, because irony deserves a laugh. Imagine explaining to your grandchildren that a single penny helped fund your retirement. They'll laugh, right until they Google it. Then they'll stop laughing and start asking questions. That's the power of hidden value. It sounds absurd until it becomes undeniable. As we approach the final act, everything connects. The 2060 Lincoln penny error is modern enough to still be hiding in plain sight, rare enough to ignite bidding wars, and desirable enough to attract serious money. It sits at the perfect intersection of accessibility and exclusivity. And for those who act decisively, who authenticate, preserve, and position their coins correctly, the rewards can be life-altering. Not hypothetical. Not someday. But now, while demand is hot and awareness is still catching up. So here's the final truth, delivered plainly and without exaggeration. Wealth does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers from a coin jar, waits in an old drawer, or rests inside a forgotten roll of pennies. The question is not whether valuable coins still exist. They do. The real question is whether you will recognize opportunity before the rest of the world does. Because in markets like this, attention creates advantage, timing creates wealth, and hesitation creates stories that begin with, "I used to have one of those." And that, quietly, is the most expensive sentence of all. Imagine this for a moment. You reach into your pocket, pull out a simple penny, and suddenly realize it's not worth 1 cent, but potentially $911,000. Sounds impossible, right? That disbelief you're feeling right now is exactly why so many Americans unknowingly spend or ignore rare coins every single day. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The next person who finds one of these coins could be sitting at your kitchen table. Or it could be you. The question is, Would you recognize it before it's gone forever? Today, we're uncovering one of the most quietly powerful modern coin discoveries in U.S. history, the 2016 Lincoln 1-cent penny with no mint mark error. A coin struck in plain sight, during a year most people assume is too recent to matter, yet one verified example has reached a current market valuation approaching $911,000. Yes, nearly $1 million. And before you laugh and think, that can't be real, remember, every legendary coin story starts with this belief. This is not just a story about metal. This is a story about awareness, timing, and the thin line between ordinary life and extraordinary wealth. In 2016, billions of Lincoln pennies were produced. Most were spent on coffee, tossed into jars, forgotten in car cup holders. No one was paying attention, because when people stop paying attention, opportunity hides comfortably. Somewhere in that massive production run, a no-mint mark era penny was struck under conditions that should never have happened. It passed inspections. It entered circulation. And for years, it lived unnoticed, blending in with pennies worth exactly 1 cent. Here's the ironic part. People chase old coins because they expect value to look ancient, rusty, faded. But real wealth doesn't always announce itself with age. Sometimes it looks brand new, which is exactly why it gets overlooked. That's not just true for coins, by the way. Funny how life works like that, isn't it? When this particular 2016 penny was finally examined under professional magnification, experts immediately noticed irregularities that set off alarms. Precision errors. Striking anomalies. Characteristics so rare that seasoned numismatists reportedly paused before speaking. That silence? That's the sound of value being recognized. In today's coin market, rarity is no longer enough. Demand is king. And era coins, especially modern, verifiable U.S. errors, are in extreme demand right now. Why? Because wealthy collectors don't just want history, they want uniqueness. They want conversation pieces. They want something no one else at the country club owns. And a modern penny worth nearly $1 million checks every box. Let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. If you had found this penny 5 years ago, would you have spent it? Would it be gone right now? That uncomfortable feeling you're getting is fear, and fear is useful when it wakes us up. Here's a quick mental reset, because I know attention drifts. Ready? If pennies are worthless, why are the richest collectors on earth quietly buying them by the thousands? Exactly. That assumption just shattered. As awareness spread, auction houses began paying attention. Private buyers began competing. Prices didn't climb gradually, they surged. This wasn't hype. This was market pressure. And the final valuation reflected something deeper than metal and mistakes. It reflected scarcity meeting urgency. Once collectors realized how few of these era pennies truly exist, hesitation disappeared. When demand spikes and supply freezes, prices don't ask permission to explode. It's about what may still be out there. Experts agree that undiscovered examples could still exist in circulation, sitting in drawers, jars, and forgotten envelopes across America. And every day that passes, the odds shrink, not because the coins vanish, but because the informed buyers are moving faster. This is the moment where opportunity knocks softly. It doesn't kick down the door. It doesn't shout. It whispers. And most people don't hear whispers. Think about this. The difference between someone who stays financially stuck and someone who breaks through often comes down to attention. Awareness. The willingness to look twice at what everyone else ignores. Wealthy lifestyles aren't built only on income, they're built on recognition of value before the crowd arrives. Right now, the market for rare U.S. era pennies is hotter than ever. Collectors are paying premiums not just for rarity, but for timing. And timing favors those who act early. Waiting feels safe, but waiting is expensive. By the time everyone agrees something is valuable, it's already priced out of reach. So here's the quiet challenge I'll leave you with. The next time you see a penny, don't dismiss it. Don't underestimate it. Because hidden value doesn't look flashy, it looks familiar. And sometimes, the smallest coin carries the heaviest potential. 1 moment of curiosity. One careful look. One decision to pay attention. That's all that separates a forgotten penny from a life-changing discovery. And if you're serious about selling old and rare penny coins, about stepping into a wealthier future instead of watching others claim it, remember this. The market rewards those who recognize value before it becomes obvious. History favors the prepared. Fortune favors the observant. And sometimes, it favors the person who didn't spend the penny.